Hey guys, it's me Maple, of course, and in this video I am going to talk about this chart that you see on screen, and a big warning at the beginning of this. I'm going to get political, and if you are of the neoliberal, conservative, or right-wing in general ideologies, you will not feel welcome here, and that is for a reason. Anyways, I'm gonna get to the chart. I will say that I am recording this in the middle of the day, and we have a lot of birds, so hopefully that's not too annoying. Alright, so this is a chart that Michelle and I made, Michelle being my wife, and this came about from a conversation we had on the day that we made it, December 27th of last year, 2021. And we brought up that pretty much nobody uses this chart. Some people do, that's fine. If you enjoy the old 5E alignment chart, continue using that. Most people I know, pretty much, I've never met anyone who actually uses the alignment chart, except for some people getting mad at me. But we brought that up. We brought up the alignment chart and the fact that nobody uses it, and the fact that we hate it. And we were trying to figure out exactly why, what was wrong with it. And it came down to a few things. One of them irks me the most. But the main thing, I guess, about it is that it is entirely subjective. Every single word on the original chart, good, evil, lawful, chaotic, they're all entirely subjective, meaning that those words are pretty much meaningless. The same thing could be seen as lawful or chaotic from the perspective of somebody else. Same thing for good and evil. There isn't much of a well-defined meaning behind what good is, what evil is, and they try to define that through the gods, the demons, the devils, whatever, in Dungeons and Dragons lore. That's fine and all. If you like that system, like I said, use it, go for it, have fun with it. But we hated the subjectivity of those words and the fact that it wasn't stable by any means. It was very nonsensical is the word I think I'm looking for. And the other problem with it was the word neutral, and the fact that neutrality outside of chemistry does not exist. Now, if you Google it, the first example they'll give is Switzerland during World War II. They remained neutral by continuing trade with both the Axis and the Allies, and they just let Hitler, they gladly accepted Nazi gold and keeping it on neutral ground. Meanwhile, they were slaughtering millions of people. Now, I don't know about you, but neutrality doesn't seem like they were being all that neutral there. And if that is what is considered neutral, that would be pretty much apathy. I mean, neutrality and apathy are synonyms, really. And by no means is that a stance that I think most people would consider good, and it would be far more likely to be considered evil. And this leads to an argument that I'm going to put forth that apparently a lot of people who actually think about this topic agree with. There is a lot to unpack with the word neutral and the idea of neutrality. because it was created as a way to be extremely selfish and try to toss any responsibility onto everybody else and to pretend like they're not part of the situation. But an argument that I wanted to put forth is the reason that I picked empathy and apathy, or we picked empathy and apathy, is because they are the most objective forms of good and evil. For instance, humanity in a lot of ways is defined by our ability to be empathetic. That is what makes humans human. Now, other animals can be empathetic, but it's rarely, if ever, to the degree that humans are. That is one of our somewhat unique traits. And if you look at, definitions of words and how they're used, to treat someone humanely or to euthanize something humanely is to recognize the feelings and emotions. It's to be empathetic towards whatever creature, person, situation is at hand on or being discussed. And the definitive opposite of empathy, which I think a lot of people would consider empathy to be the most objective good there could be, that cannot really be argued, at least feeling wise. And the definitive opposite of empathy is apathy. And apathy, in a lot of ways, is the most objective form of evil, which I don't really like the words good and evil, but it suits this because that is the previous chart, and explains that picks why we pick these words. I suppose I could give another example, but I guess to preface this as well, in a lot of ways, good and evil wouldn't be used in situations where there is no, human involvement, there is no animal involvement, there is no emotional involvement. And same with empathy and apathy. So every scenario put forth in which it would be applied will have some sort of moral conundrum where you have to pick a side, pretty much. And to feign neutrality is to be on the side of whatever evil forces are at hand. Use that twice now. So, for instance, a bit of set dressing. It is you and one other person going to a lake that is somewhat isolated. There is nobody else around. It is just you and this one other individual. You have a phone that is full on battery and has service, so you can make a call whenever you want. There is a small dock with a conveniently placed, what are those things called? Those inner tube things that you throw, they float, people can grab on. I don't know what they're called. I can't think of it off the top of my head at the moment. And there is also a road that you went down, and about a mile away there are people that are capable of helping in case of an emergency. Now, you're on the shore by the dock. You have your phone handy, and you're still just a mile away from other people. the other person you're with is swimming, and just by chance you notice that they're struggling and they appear to start drowning, and they can just barely squeeze out the word help. What would a neutral position be? Because a lot of people would consider neutral to be, well, just that, the idea of neutrality, to not get involved. It is an attempt to throw away blame and responsibility. In this particular instance, where you're fully capable, let's say you're also fully capable of swimming out to them and grabbing them yourself. If you had any single one of those options, and you didn't pick any of them out of the idea of neutrality, does that make you just not responsible for the outcome? In a lot of situations, no. Most people would say no. Whoever just sits there and watches someone else drown without doing anything to help is probably a terrible person and could, in many instances, be considered evil. And yet again, you can ask anybody what they think good and evil is, and they will give a different idea. But that is an example that can be easily, you can change things in and out very easily to see the moral spectrum, I guess, of any scenario. And in a lot of ways, the drowning individual would be the people that were being slaughtered in World War II, genocided, I should say. The person standing there with many available tools to help, Switzerland, and the water being Nazi Germany and the Axis powers. They just kind of sat there, and even they rummaged through the clothes that individual that's drowning left and took all their valuables willingly. Or I guess in this instance, something, I don't know, that overcomplicates it, but that is the general idea here. That they sat there when they had the ability to do something and just let it happen. If anything, they participated in it by stealing from the individuals that Nazi Germany stole from. So, I hope that can help explain this situation, and it is also why this is going to get very political. Because the idea that one could be a moderate or a centrist is an absolute lie. Anyone who claims to be in the middle, anyone who claims to be a centrist, a moderate whatever, is full of shit. And honestly, in some instances, worse than the people actually doing the bad things, because they're just trying to pretend that it doesn't exist. So anyone who says that they're on the fence is, yet again, just, they're not good people, to say the least. Because if you actually cared about a situation where you even want to say that you're picking a side, like trying to pretend like you're being apolitical or whatever, it doesn't work either, because everything is political. Everything. You know, YouTube gets political in a lot of ways. Policies, politicians affect how you consume, and they often encourage consumption, which is part of the problem that we have with, the biggest part of the problem that we have with society as a whole. All the big corporations just want you to consume, and I've always been very against capitalism, and that gets me a lot of weird looks from heavily indoctrinated individuals who don't even know what capitalism is. I mean, for anyone who is uninformed, capitalism isn't trading, it isn't commerce. Capitalism is the idea of a society that prioritizes money, wealth, capital over everything else, including human life. Which is why, even though the United States is more than capable of providing health care, food, education, housing, and many utilities to every individual in this country, and even more so, we are fully capable of doing that. But that doesn't make anybody money. That doesn't increase the income. And a lot of people will lie and say that we can't afford it. It's all a lie. It always has been. It would be extremely easy, actually, to afford, take care of every individual in this country. We have a relatively small population, and pretty much every other country can manage to do things that our politicians say are impossible. And, yet again, capitalism is the idea of focusing purely on profit, on money, on capital, and in many ways, it is purposely ending human life and making human life worse. I just watched a video recently where the people who made the metaverse, Facebook, or Meta now, but Facebook, and other companies associated with it, where they're selling virtual real estate, pretty much admitted that they can make the prices of real estate insanely high by artificially making it scarce. And then they just said the quiet part out loud. It's how we do a lot of things. That's how capitalists and politicians do a lot of things. And just because you support capitalism does not mean that you're a capitalist. Many people who call themselves capitalists don't even actually own their car, let alone a house, multiple houses, land, property of any kind. Many capitalists, self-proclaimed capitalists, don't own anything but their toothbrush and some small possessions. Now, even large supporters of capitalism don't own much capital. It's insane how easy it is to fool people into supporting rich people who do not care about you with this fake idea that you will someday become rich, which not only is it not really worth chasing such a thing, a lot of people don't want it. The only reason that you're driven to want wealth in this world, in capitalist societies, is because of artificial scarcity. It is because even though we have more houses than we have people in the United States of America, housing is skyrocketing because people are buying multiple properties, because companies are buying multiple properties. Companies are buying houses that should be illegal, 100%. Foreign companies are buying property and have been for a long time now. None of that is obviously okay. And that can take me to another point where we have immense amounts of food. We would be capable of feeding everybody on Earth with the amount of food we produce in the United States alone. But it is not an uncommon sight to stumble upon dumpsters, landfills, and farms where mountains of various types of perfectly edible food are just dumped randomly in large quantities to artificially inflate the price of goods. And now a lot of that stupidity is coming back to bite a lot of us in the ass. You know, the future is looking rather grim. Meanwhile, our media is talking about how, like, China is hogging grain, while they're just storing. They have federal reserves, if you will. We got rid of our federal reserves, the United States. We don't have any stored grain for famine. We're not preparing for anything like that, but our media is already trying to justify some kind of war with China in the future for grain, for food. That is how fucked this situation is. You know, if you're worried about Ukraine, don't be. Nothing's happening over there. It's a show. If we actually got into a war, you know, it would either be absolutely like nothing going on over there, or it'll be nuclear war and you won't have to worry about anything. We're all dead at that point. But chances are it's just for show. Because if they can get the public on board using manufactured consent, then suddenly they can get a lot more defense contracts and make a lot more money, trillions and trillions of dollars. Meanwhile, we can't afford health care, our infrastructure's crumbling, etc., etc. No, I've been talking a lot of doom and gloom, and I went off on a tangent. Now my cat's meowing at me. 1 second. Meow, meow, yeah. And now it's time to come back down, because this video wasn't entirely about the chart, really. I wanted it to be months ago, or at least a month ago, when I started writing a script and stuff, and I just kind of gave up on that. It didn't feel like something I wanted to make, and it gets too difficult, because I'm not, like, I'd be putting a lot of effort into something that would get a lot of hate from random individuals who are heavily indoctrinated into absolutely insane beliefs on things. And like all the people who want to argue about neutrality, just, I'm okay with criticisms. I implore people to criticize me, because in a lot of ways I feel like not enough people do. But when I get criticisms on this, it is never constructive. It is frustration from their end, not being happy with it, nitpicking it. You know, there's that popular phrase, like, at first they laugh at you or whatever. I forgot the rest of it, but at some point it describes how people like nitpick at things. Like, some of the common nitpicks was apathy. A lot of people get very frustrated that apathy, which a lot of people understand to be neutrality, is considered evil. It breaks up a lot of their, you know, personal myopic worldview. It shakes them up, and it, you know, it can fill someone with guilt, shame, regret, and other things like that, alienation even. And all those feelings are unfortunate, but understandable. You know, a lot of people do train, you know, that our country, United States, definitely trains people to be neutral in a lot of situations, to be non-reactionary, I guess, as well. to be very docile and domesticated, to just follow what they're told, which is why, a common instance of that is I'm not even gonna go there. That's too much. Instead of focusing on the doom and the gloom and all the horrible things, which doesn't really help anybody, but it can open the eyes of some individuals who have difficulty seeing that. Like, I was once a very stupid individual. In a lot of ways, I still can be stupid. But on this topic, on politics, I have been paying attention. I have been studying, and I know quite a bit about what I'm talking about. And okay, that's where I was. I was trying to remember where I left off. Short-term memory. Getting distracted by Kiko chirping. And this constant cough. But anyways, when I was around 16-ish, give or take, 15, 16, I started watching Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro. I was still left-leaning in a lot of ways, but I didn't understand a lot of things, and I found the first person who would make me feel comfortable about certain things and try to make it seem like it's things I don't have to think about, things I don't have to worry about, and boy, is that not helpful. I think one thing that definitely broke my attachment to those individuals was it was very quick. I went on a binge of that Change My Mind series, and I got to the point where it was pro-life, and it made me realize very quickly that in no instance was he ever going to change his mind, because all the other people were providing amazing arguments in that entire video of why you should be pro-choice. And he did not want to change his mind. He was not interested in that. He wanted to shit on people. And he made the mistake of, instead of going to a college campus with a bunch of kids who do not fully grasp things, who aren't prepared, he went onto the street and found random individuals who were much more prepared and educated on the topic and ready to lay into his dumbass. Went on to mention that Steven Crowder is 100% a closeted trans individual. There's no doubt about it. With how often he wears women's clothes. No shame. It's pathetic that someone like that, so many people who are homophobic, transphobic, and the like are in fact homosexuals, transsexuals, etc. It is this form of self-hate and guilt. Kiko, shush. Self-hate and guilt that is pushed upon people, beaten into individuals to hate these things that they don't understand. You'll find that common. It's very common for people to get irrationally angry, fearful, frustrated with things that they cannot comprehend. And, some things take a long time to fully understand, like homosexuality and transsexuality. Like, I didn't really understand, pronouns and why people cared about them for a while. And it was only about last year that I started to really understand all of that. And in the end, there's a lot of things people care way too much about. And it wasn't that people were caring too much about pronouns, it was the people who cared. There was people caring too much about other people caring about pronouns. It's a funny form of projection. And you will find projection all over the place through uneducated, conservative, neoliberal individuals who do not understand the things that they want to talk about. They will think that because Ben Shapiro talks fast and knows some big words, that he's smart. Ben Shapiro is actually really stupid. The more you listen to him, he is putting on a show to an extent, but he also genuinely believes in a lot of things he says. And there is a reason that you will find a lot of neoliberals and especially conservatives and right-wingers in things like religion, which is also heavily associated with a lack of education and understanding, and unreasonable amounts of fear, regret, and shame. That is how they get you. It is a lot of different methods of controlling individuals with fear, with forced ideas. You have to think that there is a good and that there is a bad blanketed out in the world. You have to think that there is a good and evil, a lawful and a chaotic for religions to function. Now, there are very few religions that go against the grain and are actually good. And ironically enough, like the Church of Satanism, amazing. They actually show empathy. That is their main goal. They actually pay their taxes. They don't use it as a tax dodge. They are against church and state. They want to separate them like our founding fathers did. They are good. They just use Satan as a joke in a way, because also, if you read any religious scripture regarding the Holy Bible, Christianity, Catholicism, and all of that stuff, pretty much in every instance, God is an extremely selfish, bigoted asshole. Jesus is a communist, and which I'm perfectly okay with. And Satan, Lucifer, the devil, is a really good person. He is being punished by God to hurt the people he wanted to help. That is why he was kicked out of heaven, is because he wanted to help the suffering. And now God, in a sick and twisted way, put Lucifer down there in hell to torture and make people suffer for eternity. What kind of sick and twisted individual reads the Bible, any Bible, and wants to believe in any of that or use any of it, even if it was hypotheticals and analogies and stuff? All of the Bible's teachings, in a lot of ways, are fucked up. There's very few that are good, and ironically, those are the ones that a lot of religious people ignore. Like, I don't remember Bible quotes perfectly, but I believe Matthew. It's attributed to Matthew. It was about a rich person having about as good of a chance of entering heaven as a camel through the eye of a needle. Something along those lines. I completely butchered it, but pretty much saying that anyone who owns wealth isn't going to make it into heaven. But a lot of religious people will completely ignore that. A lot of religious people will occasionally give $10 worth of canned food to a food drive, and usually those food drives go to our military, where they're killing innocent brown people in other countries. So, religion is full of hypocrites, contradictions, and bullshit. And I am not someone who's like, I'm an atheist, so I think I'm cool. I actually have genuine criticisms of religion, every religion, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, whatever the fuck, Islam, etc., etc. Any religion and all religion is bad. That is just, unfortunately, the truth, and I wouldn't even consider Satanism necessarily a religion, so much so that it is a parody of religion. It is what it should be about. Well, you'll find religious people preaching about charity, but they'll have nice manicured lawns, big parking lots, a big empty building that is empty most of the time. They'll have church vehicles, and they will take massive amounts of donations regularly, and they won't pay their taxes. They are not interested in community, they're interested in themselves. Like, Kenneth Copeland seems like a rare individual. He seems like an uncommon thing, but he is just the manifestation of, not even trying to hide it. He looks like a demon. Like, seriously, you made that plane so cheap for me, I just had to buy it. Fucking terrifying. And people will look at that man and think that, following his word will get them into heaven, and they don't even understand that heaven is a communist utopia. Oh my goodness. Now, I don't know if I have much more else to say about all of this. I completely derailed. I suppose I do remember saying that I wanted to get away from the doom and gloom and all that stuff, but I ended up just going back into it. There have been things that I've been looking into lately, well, for a long time, really, due to the fact of the crushing weight of the pressure of humanity killing Earth. Humanity making Earth kill us and all other living things, pretty much. And some of those things that I've looked into due to that, understanding the problems that we have and wanting to help, as well as things that I'm just genuinely interested in, are, one of the first things that really got me into it was aquaponics, aquaculture, a system in which you have like I have an aquaponics system. I've never recorded it because it's really ugly and not well made. It just kind of sits there and it grows mint. That's about it. Because I'm not good at it, and I haven't. It costs money to do, and I don't have a lot of money. But aquaponics is the idea of having the most simplified version, having a tank of water where you have fish. You feed the fish, they defecate in the water, and that water is pumped, cycled through a bed of a grow medium, usually like gravel or expanded clay, where you will be growing plants, and the plants will eat the nutrients, filter the water, clean it, and the water will go back aerated and clean back towards the fish. And the only thing you actually have to add is fish food, and you can grow fish food in a separate system where you can grow things like duckweed and other small, things like shrimp and other insects and the like that the fish would eat. That is a bit more complicated and takes more money and more setup. I just have I think 275-gallon tote called the Chop and Flip. Chopped off like a foot off the top, flipped it, put a couple of wood beams to support it, filled it with gravel, put a bell siphon in there. It's pretty terrible. It's very redneck engineering, But it was a fun project. I've had a smaller one in the past, a very small one made out of materials that it should never have been made. And that one was using a turtle. And that one wasn't that good. I also even had a smaller one that I spent way too much money on when at the very beginning when I started. I had a beta fish named Bob Ross because he was very pretty. He was a pretty male beta fish. And there's like this $60 way too small container. You know, after my brother got into fish and marine biology, he does not do any of that stuff, but he has like a massive aquarium and stuff, and it got me, and aquaponics educated me on what a lot of animals really need space-wise. But this was a very small tank, and it had 6 little grow pots on top. And it came with tiny seeds where you could grow some stuff. That one was terrible. It was not well made. $60 for that piece of crap. Don't even know what happened to it. Think we gave it away or something. But yeah. I've done a few things in that area, and I plan to do a lot more in the future, hopefully. Don't know how that's gonna work, but I'm gonna look into it, because I really like aquaponics, but still, aquaponics is one of those initial things that really got me into it, and now I even got a lot of compliments from teachers and stuff, because I would write essays about aquaponics when I had to pick my own subject, and I got a lot of teachers actually being interested in what I was talking about, because I was genuinely passionate about it, and in a lot of ways I still am. Not so much aquaponics because of the initial startup cost, and the end result not being as good as other things like hydroponics, which is more efficient, although I don't know how the chemicals are sourced, and I've never looked into it because I never thought it would be the most ethically sourced chemicals. Anyways, all of that eventually led to me today where I am heavily invested in permaculture, agroforestry, and other things like that, regenerative agriculture. Huge fan of Jeff Lawton, GEOFF space LAWTON. He's got a farm in Australia called Zaytuna Farm. Major permaculture figure, idol, probably the biggest one out there right now. Definitely recommend checking him out. He's got a lot of free resources out there if you're interested in helping heal the planet. If there's any way to do it, it's through permaculture and marine permaculture, which I don't know if that's a thing, but it should be a thing. Hopefully we can figure out ways to save the coral reefs and stuff like that, but that's a whole different... I don't know anything about the ocean, and I don't know, I'm not a fan of the ocean. But I still want it to be saved. Anyways, I think that's the end of this video. It spanned many different topics, which is fitting for me, and hopefully you found it relaxing and interesting and maybe educational in some instances, and I am more than willing to discuss any of the topics that I brought up. If you want, in the comments down below, or you can check the description for my Discord information. I think there's a link to a Discord server that is pretty empty, but I welcome anyone who's interested in anything involving my channel. Video games, ASMR, art, permaculture, politics. Feel free to join in and discuss things with me. Anyways, with the serenation of Kiko chirping a little bit too loud, 1 second, I'm gonna end it here. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.